In yet another justification for the loot changes in Battle for Azeroth, Blizzard recently said that people deserve loot when they kill a boss, as if it's a reward. Now, as a Mythic raider himself, Ion Hazzikostas knows that loot as a reward is valid for a large section of the raiding community, but that it's a tool for progression at the cutting edge end. However, there are some scenarios I'd like to discuss here and how the logic simply falls short. The conclusion of this video is not going to come down in favour of enforced personal loot for guilds. You have been warned. So the first thing to mention here is this is not an overview of the personal loot, master loot changes with considering pros and cons. I've already done a video on that. This is focusing on a single issue, that is the idea of people deserving loot. Any other issues around that have been covered before. So discussing this last night on the Azeroth review and reading some comments from the uploaded video version, I want to run through a few scenarios. The first scenario is a largely guild group which pugs a few players. Now, let's face it, you're being carried. Why should you be rewarded for very little work? You might even be invited only to maximise the loot output. In fact, there's an advantage and disadvantage to both parties in this case. The advantage to the guild is they maximise their loot haul for their raiders. Filling up a heroic or normal raid to 30 nets more loot than just taking 25 raiders. The disadvantage is that you are inviting a few clowns who may produce low DPS, making everyone else work harder as the boss health goes up for each extra player, of course, or that they clown about with the mechanics and get a few people killed. The advantage for the pug is an easy carry through the bosses with a nice achievement at the end, along with the chance to learn some aspects of the fight in a safe environment where not much will be asked of you, and the chance to coin some loot yourself. The disadvantage is that you will watch some very big upgrades drop and you have no chance of acquiring any unless they are not needed by the raiders. Both parties need to decide whether the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. If they don't, then don't do it. But on the issue of deserving loot, how on earth does someone getting carried through easy kills deserve anything more than they are getting? The second scenario is similar with a largely guild group that's semi-pugging but reserving loot. Don't join them. I never would. The idea of reserving loot goes way back to when master loot would be used for all raids, pug or otherwise. I have never accepted reserving loot as an acceptable way to go and refused ever to join those. I even left a guild once on account of its pug raid activities. But I digress. In this case, again, ask yourself why you would join this group. It's a guild group, and you think they'll run through all the bosses with minimal wiping and you will get a great carry. So again, there's no justification for saying you deserve loot. To use master loot, a raid must have 80% of its members in the same guild. If a raid has this, then it is making the run for the benefit of its members. This is what guilds are. You join a guild for mutual benefit. There are commitments on your part towards the guild and this is reciprocated. You don't join a guild so you can work at learning how to kill bosses quickly and easily, just to let in a few random pugs to get a free ride on the back of your work. So this example is really not much different to the first, only there may be a lack of clarity on the part of the organiser. But the bottom line is this: who is seriously going to argue with me in the comments that people deserve loot without progressing the bosses? Rewards are given for being effective in some way. If you want to join a guild group but not actually be in a guild, then you are saying that you want a zero effort experience. Fine, I've already gone over why a guild might let you in their raid, but you don't deserve loot. If you want to work for the loot but don't want to join a guild, then you need to join or create a pug and slog your way through as far as you can get, safe in the knowledge that the loot you do acquire is well deserved. Of course, the situation in BFA now will be that those guild runs where you get to join and get the easy carry will no longer take place. Any advantage that currently exists for a guild to take on a few pugs is going to be wiped out. So the only pugs that are going to exist are going to be genuine pugs. It's a case really of biting the hand that feeds you. The third scenario is that you are trial in a guild and are on low priority for loot. You are still being carried to a certain extent. At the point where you've shown yourself to be an asset to the group, that tends to be when your trial ends. Guilds, and especially mythic guilds, have rules and policies which cover loot and the trial period. Don't join a guild that doesn't have the rules you would enjoy playing with. When joining a guild as a trial, you may be significantly behind them on progress. In this case, you will be working hard to learn fights that everyone else has become competent in through progress. Why is it fair that you get loot on a boss you didn't progress? The raiders in the guild beat the boss, not you. Now, as I said at the start, for high-end raiding, loot is a tool and not a reward. In fact, in my previous guild, trials did sometimes get loot over raiders. Our belief was that we've put in a lot of work into making sure that our trials can cut the mustard. We did a lot of research on them. We just need the trial period to be certain and to check their more personal qualities, such as getting on with everyone and being reliable. As such, we expected our trials to be with us for the long term and were happy to invest right away. However, we had a couple of instances of a trial getting a good upgrade and then leaving to go elsewhere. This caused a lot of disharmony within the rest of the guild, so we had to stop that policy, and this is why the vast majority of other Mythic guilds would do the same anyway. So let's say you join a guild at a similar level of progress to your previous one. You've progressed through those bosses, but you had the chance of loot with that previous guild. But the strategy may be different in the new guild. So you may still be a very wobbly raider even on familiar bosses if the tactics are less familiar, or even if your role is less familiar. But like I said, in Cutting Edge Mythic Guild, loot is not given because people deserve it, but because it will push future progress. In the very high-end guilds, you may have a tank who is one of your best players, but they're still not getting much loot, even if they've been in the guild for 10 years. DPS have general priority at the very sharp end. Finally, and coming back to the deserving loot again, the personal loot changes actually mean that some players who may actually be the best player in your Mythic Guild raid will struggle to get loot. I've already produced a video explaining how some Mythic raiders will have a much tougher time of getting loot than with master looting, so I'd suggest checking that out. The link's in the description below. But the point is that this new system might help some people get loot in niche situations where I'd argue they don't actually deserve it. However, it also prevents other players who are more clearly deserving getting it. You give with one hand by taking from the other. The idea that this will increase the amount of loot that all raiders get, because that's what some people have taken the implications of what Blizzard justification is simply false. This system is actually specifically designed to reduce the amount of loot that may be utilised. People are coming up with various theories as to why Blizzard are really doing it, which is understandable given that Blizzard talk about a number of benefits, but never about the actual reason. Every time they talk about an issue, the following interview, they then say, oh, but that's not the real reason, that's just a fringe benefit. As I see it, it's been made for the same reason that Titan Forging came in Legion, and War Forging, which was originally Thunder Forging, first of all came in Mists of Pandaria. It's about extending the life of a raid and dungeon content by making it all but impossible to get BIS sets of gear. By reducing the chances of a Titan Forge proc in Battle for Azeroth compared to Legion, we might get to a point where people see it as not worth rerunning content for that much lower chance. Well, with the new personal loot system, we may well be delayed in getting even good baseline sets of gear for all of our raiders by several weeks. It all adds to the replayability, another system to artificially keep us running content beyond its standard shelf life. So there you go. As I say, that video is on a single issue. It doesn't at all address the very genuine reasons why some people like this new system. I've already talked about that before, but I hope you found this video interesting for what it was. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with other people for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.